The sun beat down on the arid plains of Montana, turning the dirt roads into a fine, choking powder. Elias Thorne, a man whose face was as weathered and hard as the land he worked, rode his horse toward the small, isolated Amish community. Behind him, his 5 sons, Caleb, the eldest and most stoic, Joshua, the thoughtful builder, twins Isaac and Isaiah, inseparable and quick-witted, and young Daniel, still finding his footing, rode in a tight formation. The dust kicked up by their horses was a cloud of silent accusation. Elias had been a rancher for 30 years, carving a life out of this unforgiving landscape. He was a man of his word, and he expected the same from others. A year ago, the leader of the Amish community, a man named Jacob Fisher, had borrowed a significant sum from Elias to buy a new plot of land for his expanding family. The deal was simple: a year's grace period, and then the money was to be repaid with a small interest. But Jacob had died suddenly, leaving behind his widow, Sarah, and their 4 children, and the debt had been forgotten by his grieving community. Elias reined in his horse before a simple, wooden farmhouse, its porch empty save for a few rocking chairs. He dismounted, his boots crunching on the gravel. Sarah Fisher, a woman of significant size with a kind, weary face, emerged from the house. Her traditional blue dress and white bonnet seemed to wilt in the oppressive heat. Her eyes, however, held a quiet strength. "Brother Elias," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I know why you've come." "The debt, Sarah," Elias said, his voice as rough as sandpaper. "Jacob owed me $500. I've given you time. Now the time is up." Sarah looked away, her gaze settling on the dusty fields. "We don't have it. After Jacob's passing, the community has been struggling. We've been hit with a dry spell, and the crops—" Elias's jaw tightened. "I am sorry for your loss, but that's a problem for you to solve, not me. A deal is a deal." He gestured to his sons. "I didn't come here to see a woman struggle. I came to collect what's mine. I have a ranch to run, and I can't do it with empty pockets." Sarah looked from Elias to his sons. They stood silent, their faces impassive. "What do you propose, Elias?" Elias's eyes narrowed. "I'm not here to foreclose on your land, Sarah. I'm here to offer you a way out. I'll take a payment in labor. Your son, Amos, can come work on my ranch until the debt is paid." Sarah's expression hardened. "Amos is a boy, Elias, and he's needed here." "I see you have 5 sons," Elias said, pointing a thumb at his boys. "5 sons who will pay what you owe." The words hung in the air, a stark declaration. He paused, his gaze fixed on Sarah. "But that's not what I'm proposing. I am proposing a different solution. You have a skill for healing, for tending to those who are sick. I've heard about it from others in town. My wife, Martha, she's been ailing for months. The town doctor, he can't do much for her anymore. I'm desperate. You, Sarah, and your 2 daughters, Hannah and Esther, will come to my ranch and care for my wife. In exchange, the debt will be considered settled. My sons will also assist with the work here until your family can take back control of your farm." Sarah's eyes widened, a flicker of something close to terror in them. We have our own way of life, Elias. We cannot abandon our community. We cannot live under your roof." "You have no choice," Elias said, his voice a low rumble. "This is my offer. It's not a request. Either you come to the ranch and we forget this debt, or I take your land. I don't want to, Sarah, but I will, for my own family." He looked at his sons again. 5 sons will pay what you owe in one way or another." The gravity of the situation settled over them like a thick blanket. Sarah's world, one of quiet prayer and communal support, was now colliding with the unforgiving, individualistic world of Elias Thorne. The old woman, burdened by her sighs and grief, faced a decision that would change the course of her family's life forever. The next day, a simple wagon carried Sarah, Hannah, and Esther across the plains toward the Thorne Ranch. The girls, aged 18 and 16, clung to their mother, their faces pale with a mixture of fear and sorrow. The world outside their community felt vast and alien, with its sprawling fences and the rough-hewn faces of the Thorn men. The Thorn Ranch was a testament to Elias's hard work, a collection of sturdy wooden buildings and corrals teeming with livestock. The main house was larger than anything they had ever known, and as they entered, a wave of unfamiliar smells and sounds hit them. The scent of wood smoke, old leather, and a faint, sickly sweet aroma of illness. Martha Thorne lay in a large bed in a sunlit room, her body frail and wasted. Her skin was a pale, translucent shade, and her eyes were sunken with pain. The doctor had diagnosed her with a slow-burning fever, but no remedies had worked. Sarah approached the bed with a quiet grace, her large frame moving with a surprising lightness. "Martha," Sarah said, her voice gentle, "I am Sarah Fisher. I've come to help." Martha's weak hand reached for Sarah's. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a reedy rasp. "Elias, he's a hard man, but he is a good man." For the next few weeks, Sarah and her daughters worked tirelessly. They prepared poultices from herbs Sarah had brought with her, brewed medicinal teas, and tended to Martha with a quiet patience that seemed to calm the ailing woman. The Thorne boys, initially wary of the new arrivals, began to observe the women's devotion. Caleb, in particular, found himself drawn to Hannah, whose quiet strength was a stark contrast to his own hardened nature. He saw her tending to the ranch's chickens, her hands moving with a practiced ease, and he felt a curiosity he hadn't known since his youth. As the days turned into weeks, the rhythm of the Thorne Ranch began to shift. The Amish women, with their simple ways and quiet faith, brought a new kind of order to the chaotic, male-dominated household. Sarah's herbal remedies seemed to be working, Martha's fever began to break, and a faint flush returned to her cheeks. She was not cured, but she was on the mend. Caleb, the eldest Thorne son, found himself spending more time around Hannah. She was quiet, but not shy. Her answers to his questions were simple and direct, and her eyes held a depth he couldn't quite fathom. He learned that she was a skilled seamstress and a talented baker. He also saw her compassion, the way she would sit with his mother, reading to her from a worn Bible, or simply holding her hand. One afternoon, Caleb found Hannah by the fence, watching the horses. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" she said without turning around. "They are," Caleb replied, his voice a low rumble. "My father says they're the heart of the ranch." "He loves them," Hannah said. "I can see it in his eyes, even when he pretends to be a hard man." Caleb was taken aback. "He is a hard man. He has to be. This land—" He gestured to the vast, empty expanse. "This land will chew you up and spit you out if you're not strong." "There is a difference between being strong and being hard, Caleb," Hannah said, finally turning to face him. Her gaze was direct, her brown eyes steady. "My father was strong, but he was not hard. He bent, but he did not break." Caleb found himself speechless. This young woman, with her simple dress and bonnet, had seen a truth about his father that he had never considered. He had only ever known Elias as a pillar of unyielding strength, a man who never showed weakness. But now, seeing the relief and quiet gratitude in his father's eyes as Martha began to recover, Caleb started to see the cracks in that hardened exterior. The Amish community, meanwhile, was not without its own struggles. The debt to Elias Thorne was a source of shame and conflict. Some believed that Sarah should have been left to face the consequences, while others felt compassion. The community leader, a stern man named Abram, felt that Sarah had betrayed their way of life by accepting help from an Englishman. He visited the Thorne Ranch, his face grim. "Sister Sarah," he said, standing in Elias's yard, his voice laced with disapproval, "your place is with your community, not in the house of outsiders." Sarah stood her ground, her face calm. "Brother Abram, I have come here to save my family's land and to care for a sick woman. This is what God has called me to do. My place is where I'm needed." Elias, who had been observing the exchange, stepped forward. "She's a guest in my house, Abram, and she's a damn good healer. Her work is not yet done." Abram's eyes narrowed. "I see what you are doing, Elias Thorne. You are taking advantage of a woman in her time of need. You have no right to keep her here." "She is not a prisoner," Elias said, his voice low and menacing. "She is a woman of her word, and I am a man who keeps his. The debt is settled when Martha is well, not a moment before." The conflict between Elias and Abram escalated, their words a clash of two different worlds. Caleb watched, a sense of protectiveness growing in his chest. He saw the way Abram's words wounded Hannah, who stood beside her mother, her head bowed. He felt a surge of anger, an unfamiliar feeling of wanting to defend someone other than his own family. As Martha's health steadily improved, a different kind of relationship began to blossom on the Thorne Ranch. Joshua, the thoughtful builder, spent his afternoons with Esther, the younger of the two sisters. He showed her his woodworking tools, explaining the different types of wood and the intricacies of joinery. Esther, who had only ever known simple handmade furniture, was fascinated by his skill. She, in turn, showed him how to weave baskets from thin strips of willow, a craft passed down through generations of Amish women. Their conversations were quiet, filled with shared moments of creation and mutual respect. Meanwhile, a fragile truce had been formed between Elias and Sarah. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset, the silence between them no longer a wall, but a shared space of quiet reflection. Sarah spoke of her life in the Amish community, of the simple joys and the deep faith that sustained them. Elias, in turn, spoke of the hardships of ranch life, of the unforgiving weather and the constant struggle to make a living from the land. They found common ground in their shared burdens and their unwavering devotion to their families. Caleb and Hannah's bond deepened as well. He would seek her out on the ranch, finding small reasons to be near her. He taught her how to ride a horse, a skill she had never learned. She, in turn, showed him how to tend to the garden, a small patch of green she had started behind the house, filled with herbs and vegetables. He was a man of the land, and she was a woman of the soil. Their connection was not one of grand gestures, but of quiet, shared moments, of a growing understanding that transcended their different upbringings. Just as a fragile peace had settled over the Thorne Ranch, a new threat emerged. A band of cattle rustlers had been seen in the area, their presence a dark stain on the landscape. Elias, ever vigilant, gathered his sons to discuss a plan. "They're after our herd," he said, his voice grim. "We need to be ready. We'll ride out at first light and patrol the north pasture. No man sleeps until we know our livestock is safe." The rustlers were not men of honor. They were ruthless, and they were desperate. They had been watching the Thorne Ranch, and they knew it was an easy target. They planned to strike on a moonless night when the Thorne men would be at their most vulnerable. The night of the attack, the air was heavy with a sense of foreboding. The Thorne men, exhausted from days of patrolling, had returned to the ranch, their guard down. The rustlers, led by a brutish man named Silas, struck without warning. They rode into the corrals, their shouts and gunshots shattering the night's silence. Elias, hearing the commotion, grabbed his rifle. His sons were close behind, their faces grim. A fierce gunfight erupted in the darkness, the flashes of light illuminating the chaos. In the melee, young Daniel, who was on watch, was caught in the crossfire. A bullet grazed his side, and he crumpled to the ground, his face pale with shock. The gunfight ended as quickly as it had begun, with the rustlers retreating into the night, their efforts thwarted, but their presence a clear and present danger. But the price of victory was high. Daniel lay bleeding in the dust, his breath coming in short, pained gasps. Elias, his face a mask of fear and fury, rushed to his son's side. "Daniel! Speak to me, son!" Sarah, hearing the commotion, emerged from the house, her face a picture of grim determination. She took one look at Daniel and knew what had to be done. "Bring him inside," she commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. "Now!" The Thorn boys carried Daniel into the house, laying him on a large table. Sarah worked quickly and efficiently, her large hands surprisingly nimble. She boiled water, sterilized her few tools, and began to clean the wound. She spoke in hushed tones, her voice a calming presence in the chaotic room. "Hannah, fetch the herbs," she said, her eyes fixed on the wound. "Esther, bring me more water." Caleb stood over his brother, his face a mixture of fear and awe. He had never seen a woman with such confidence and skill. She was a different person from the quiet woman who had arrived on their ranch just a few months ago. She was a mother, a healer, and a force of nature. Sarah worked through the night, her focus unwavering. She stitched the wound with a steady hand, a skill she had learned from a local midwife in her own community. The Thorn men, who had always prided themselves on their self-sufficiency, were forced to stand by and watch, their helplessness a humbling experience. By morning, Daniel was stable. The fever that had threatened to consume him was kept at bay by Sarah's poultices and her unwavering care. The Thorn family, once so isolated and self-contained, now owed a debt far greater than money. They owed a life. With Daniel's recovery, a profound shift occurred in the Thorn household. The barrier between the two families began to dissolve completely. Elias, in a rare display of emotion, sought out Sarah. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with gratitude, "you saved my boy. You've given me something I can never repay." Sarah simply smiled. "I am a mother, Elias. What I did for your son, I would do for any child. The debt, it's forgotten," Elias said, "completely. And more than that, I want you and your daughters to stay, not as payment but as family. You have a home here, Sarah, if you'll have it." The offer was staggering. Sarah, who had been so certain that her time here was temporary, was now being offered a place in this family. She looked at Elias, at the genuine offer in his eyes. She looked at her daughters, whose faces were now filled with hope and not fear. She thought of her community and of the rigidity that had driven her here in the first place. "We will stay," she said, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "For a little while longer." The acceptance was a new beginning. The Thorn boys and the Fisher girls, once strangers, were now a blended family. Caleb and Hannah's bond, once unspoken, began to grow into something more. He would ride with her on the plains, their conversations a comfortable exchange of hopes and dreams. Joshua and Esther's shared passions for crafting blossomed into a deep and abiding affection. The news of the rustlers and Sarah's heroism spread through the nearby town. Abram, the Amish elder, came to the Thorn ranch once again, his face no longer filled with disapproval, but with a reluctant respect. He had heard of Sarah's bravery and her skill as a healer. He had also heard of the Thorn family's gratitude and their offer of a home. "Sister Sarah," he said, his voice softer this time, "the community, we were wrong to judge you. We have been praying for your return." "My place is here, Brother Abram," Sarah said, her voice firm. "For now my work is with this family. They have shown me kindness and trust when my own community turned their backs." Elias stood beside Sarah, a silent testament to her words. "She and her family have earned their place here, Abram. They are family now." Abram, seeing the unshakable bond between the two families, nodded slowly. "Then may God bless you both," he said, and for the first time there was a genuine note of sincerity in his voice. The story of the debt and the 5 sons who would pay it had come full circle. It was no longer a story of obligation, but a story of redemption. Elias had gone to collect a debt, but he had come away with a family. He had lost his pride, but he had gained a deeper sense of humanity. Sarah had lost her sense of security, but she had found a new kind of home and a new understanding of her own strength. The final chapter of the story was not about the settling of a debt, but about the building of a future. Caleb and Hannah's love story unfolded slowly, with the quiet certainty of two souls meant to be together. They were married in a small, simple ceremony on the Thorn Ranch, a blend of Amish tradition and Western grit. Their union was a symbol of two different worlds coming together, a testament to the power of love to bridge any divide. Joshua and Esther also found their life together, their shared passions for creation leading them to build a new life in a small cabin near the ranch, where they continued to craft and build, their hands a testament to their love. Daniel, fully recovered, returned to his work on the ranch, his near-death experience having given him a new appreciation for the fragility of life. Isaac and Isaiah, the twins, became the protectors of the new family, their playful nature now tempered by a serious sense of responsibility. The Thorn Ranch was no longer a place of hard work and quiet solitude. It was a home filled with the laughter of children and the gentle cadence of two families intertwined. The debt had been paid not in dollars, but in a far more valuable currency, in a mother's courage, in a father's humility, in the quiet blossoming of love, and in the new understanding of what it means to be a family. The words Elias had spoken, "5 sons will pay what you owe," had come true in a way he could never have imagined. The 5 Thorn sons had not paid a financial debt, but an emotional one, learning to trust, to love, and to open their hearts to a new world. And in doing so, they had paid the greatest debt of all, the debt of a closed heart.